started, and maybe we might be able to get done a little early, and that would be all right. I'm sure it's not going to break anybody's heart. And, regardless of the rumors that Nick is spreading about me, I will try to make this quick. Yeah, anything you want to talk about in the opening?
No, I think everything of importance we were going to hit with the slides, so.
Okay. Nick, we'll go ahead and start with you on the updates for the Thule Trust.
Sure, I'm happy to get us started. Is Jesse in the room
No.
or not? Is he not there yet?
No, I don't see him.
They're still doing high-speed rail nonsense that might keep them a while. It took me about 20 minutes to get through it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was gonna have Jesse is supposed to be there in person today, and he was gonna give updates, but I'm happy to get us started. Um, Most of what we were going to talk about is similar to what I think I mentioned in previous meetings, really around funding. The trust was successful in our pre-application for the Healthy Soils grant through CDFA. So we're working on that. I believe the application is due August 18th. And then we're speaking with quite a few folks. I know Tri-County, Pixley, Audubon, and some others about an RCPP. Excited about kind of the discussions there, and I know there are some other groups that are also looking into this. And then we're also working on something with California Rangeland Conservation Coalition, for a NIFWF grant, so National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is basically just to support NRCS kind of outreach and project farm planning. And so if we're successful with that, that would also be all of Tulare County that we would be a kind of a subcontractor on. So that'd be helping Tri-County and obviously other GSAs in the Tule Sub-Basin. And then outside of the funding updates, we're also, I think, a big thing that we're moving forward with is our Watershed Coalition. And I guess it's also related to funding because we are looking to pursue a BOR Water Smart grant, which would continue the work of our coalition for another 3 years, I believe. And really what we wanted to flag on that is that Jesse is working on developing a plan. So that's kind of the main deliverable from that grant of where we kind of see the key projects and opportunities and all of that. And so we're really just looking at developing that out with partners so that we can not only have that as kind of a guiding light, I guess, for different projects and angles that we can take for things in the sub-basin, but also to use it as a key resource to advocate for this next round of funding for us so that we can continue that work. And whether it's floodplain or sustainable ag, upland or wetland habitat restoration, all of those kinds of things. So those are the main things that have been keeping us busy. I think the only other thing that I've been investigating a little bit more, and I don't know to the extent that this would be possible in Tri-County or not, but would be open to discussion, is looking more at buy, protect, sell models, with the idea being that you buy a piece of ground, you put an agricultural conservation easement on it. It immediately, because of that easement, reduces the value of the land, and then it makes it much more accessible, I guess, for early or new farmers, right, to buy that land. And so, again, not sure if that's going to be really something we're going to approach too much in Tri-County, but in some other GSAs, looking at kind of how we can move the puzzle pieces, so to speak, to see if something like that could work and actually be a benefit under SGMA conditions. So, and then I know we've been talking about the VLRP, which I think Kathy and y'all are going to talk about later, but any questions there?
Any questions for Nick? All right, not seeing any, Nick. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Amir, just a quick question. Is the trust involved in the economic impact study for the Thule, or is that just a GSA?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, we're still working on that. Thanks for the question, Jeff. I know Tri-County, Pixley, Lower Tule have all supported it. We had Porterville Irrigation District back out, and
Se
I've
ha
been
activado
trying to
la
get a
traducción
hold
de esta
of
llamada.
Sean from Sausalito and Terabella Irrigation Districts to confirm whether or not they're going to be a part of this. I have the contract all drafted and ready from our attorney, so it's really just making sure we know which GSAs are coming to the table on that or not. So thanks for the question. Anything else on that?
Sebastian, I saw you took yourself off of mute. Is there anything you wanted to add? Oh, no. I was just.
Sorry, everybody.
I was just checking. No problem. No problem at all. I was just checking. I just wanted to make sure. Jeff, are you good with any other questions or anything else that we can elaborate for you?
No, I'm glad that the three remaining GSAs all stuck up. I mean, it looks like it's funded. I mean, it'd be nice if you could get some additional payers, but I do think it's really important in light of what we're going to hear in this meeting. And you know, Tule Basin Subbasin is front and center on the front of the spear of Sigma impacts, and we really, I think, would benefit greatly. I mean, it'd be nice if it was already done, so that
Sure.
as all these stories start to circulate in the press, and my guess is it's going to get to be an even bigger story. If there was some economic data that we could accompany with those stories, it would help give context to what's going on. And so the sooner we get going with that, the better.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff. I mean, maybe I just make a question or a request to Deanna and Amir. Um, I've had a lot of trouble actually getting a hold of Sean from Terabella and Sausalito. I don't know if you kind of cross paths with him more often, or if it would be possible just to get a response from him, not to throw him under the bus or anything, but I haven't been able to get a response, and so I just need to know if he's go or no go on this, and then I can move forward. Like I said, I just don't want to move it forward with three GSAs if five are willing to contribute, and vice versa. So, uh, if you do have those connections or whatever, it'd be helpful just to kind of find that information out for us, and we can move these things forward.
Sure, Nick, I certainly can. I also think that Travis was reaching out to him as well, so I'll check with Travis and see where he's at with that, and if not, I can certainly reach out to Sean as well.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And Nick, Jesse is here. I don't know if you can see him from where you're sitting, so Jesse, you know what? Why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself, because I'm not sure everybody in the room knows you, and certainly everybody online.
Thanks, Mayor. So Jesse Roseman, I'm a watershed coordinator for the Tule Trust with Nick. Been on board for, I think, 8-9 months or so. Been mainly working on the Watershed Coalition. So also working with Nick on MLRP. Been working with different landowners to develop projects, and with Travis on the VLRP, which I know is on the agenda today. And by way of background, I worked for the Almond Board for a number of years, and then also for the Nature Conservancy, so experience in agriculture and restoration.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. I just want to make sure everybody, they're going to see your name, and they're probably going to get a chance to meet you in person here, we hope soon, and so I want to make sure everybody on the call knew who you were. Nick, anything else from the trust?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, Jesse, just to give you an update. So I gave the updates on some of the funding streams and my best overview of the Watershed Coalition, though I know you know the ins and outs of that more than I do. But if there's anything beyond that that you feel like we should share an update on, please do go ahead. But that's all I got from online.
Appreciate that, Nick. No, I think Yeah, I'm just focused on what you guys have on the agenda today, and really curious just to be here in person and just hear what you're up to.
Great. All right. Thank you, Bo. Stacey, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the quick updates that I have.
Okay.
My updates are going to be quick. I think there's going to be more questions for Deanna as part of this update. So I'm going to give you an update on the Tulare Lake and the Tule subbasins. We're going to start with the shorter one, which is Tulare Lake, because I'm sure all of you have a few questions about Tule. One of the things, just as you know, that we've been having some difficulties in getting our meetings arranged with State Board. We mentioned last time that Tulare Lake has a single point of contact now, which is Stacey Ann, who's in the room with us. And thanks to Stacey Ann's help, we now have a meeting actually scheduled with the Water Board for next Thursday, on the 30th. We have proposed monthly meetings with them. We've given them a schedule. We've laid out that schedule for them of how we're going to get from where we're at today to the end of the GSP and the submittal of the GSP by March. We pretty much gave them a month-by-month expectations on what chapters we'll have done, what topics we'll have proposed to talk about at each meeting. And so that's all been laid out to them. And keep all of that in mind, because it's going to come up in the Tule discussion here in just a bit. So we're finally getting those meetings scheduled and started with State Board and Tulare Lake. Also, the Tulare Lake, couple of updates. There was a surface water records request that came from State Board as part of the GEARS program. And Wright County and all the other 4 GSAs did respond to the state with that. For Wright County, we didn't have any records that complied with the state request for that, and so we've put together a letter to inform them of that. Speaking of GEARS data, I think if in case anyone here doesn't know, that now is available on the California Open Data Portal. There's a bunch of information available. We've gotten a chance to take a quick look at it. We haven't spent a lot of time, but we've taken a little bit of a look at it. And turned out the largest pumper in Tulare Lake was the First Baptist Church of Hanford.
Hilarious.
That pumped 24 million acre feet. They must have obviously got their units mixed up, and it's a little bit of a shame that the state didn't, notice that and talk to the state or to the church. Obviously, the Mid-Kings GSA, where the church is located, has reached out to them to offer help in getting that corrected, because we don't want them to get a bill for $47 million.
No.
So we've looked at, like I said, we've kind of just looked a little bit at the data just to see, like totals, things of that nature, how much is actually being reported, pumping, comparing that to some of our records, both for Tulare Lake as well as for Tule, but we haven't had a chance to get into it too deep just yet. But it's available for anyone who wants to take a look at it. The other meeting that we have coming up, which is on Friday of next week, is the Department of Water Resources, along with State Board, is going to be meeting with us in person on Friday to talk about rolling out the Site DMP, the Best Management Practices document. We got comments this morning, or we got an email this morning that kind of talked a little bit about some of the questions that they want us to answer, and we're looking at these and we're like, man, we are way past these questions. These were like questions for GSAs and subbasins that are barely getting into the Best Management Practices document. We're way past that. So we've put together a presentation for Tulare Lake. The Tule's team has done the same. And that meeting, is over next week, we'll have some more information from, DWR, and we'll be sharing that with you if there's anything new that comes out of that.
Yeah, Mayor, I do have a question. You said that all the data is out on the gears, and that you've started to take a look at, how much was reported. I'm curious, with that data, in terms of the totals, and then when you multiply it times the $20, and then we now know what the universe is of reported water as well as reported wells. There been any estimate on what kind of revenue the state board can expect to receive based on these self-reported numbers?
Based on those self-reported numbers between the two subbasins, and I'm rounding these numbers up, it's around $12 million. Yeah, so there was in excess of 600,000 acre feet reported.
And then did you add the $300 a well?
I did not do all of that. I didn't calculate all of that. I just kind of looked at the total number.
That's probably another. I think there's probably around between 5,000 and 6,000 wells between the two GSA, the two subbasins. So that's another $1.5 million.
Yeah, that's probably right. Around those numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we know what the state board's expenses are that they're trying to cover with this fee?
Dan, do you have a better number than I do?
So I just have the number they reported, what was it, 2 Februarys ago, when they were redoing the fees. I think it was $6 million a year or something around there.
It was, yeah. Jeff, I'm not sure if you heard that, but it was around $6 million a year is what we were told, and that was a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Okay. So as far as this is, again, staying on Tulare Lake, I just wanted to touch on a few items that we're working on. We talked about the groundwater sustainability plan. We are still working on coordinating a few issues. There's some key items on there. The groundwater model is looking at the native yield values by GSA and Aquifer. We're also starting some initial discussions on how we're going to handle surface water losses. It says surface water losses. It really should say canal losses. So this is after we've diverted from the river, and how we're going to handle those credits, and how all of that water is going to be separated and accounted for in the model. Obviously, we're making sure that we're in compliance with Science BNP. We have a whole slideshow that we're showing Department of Water Resources in a week or so on how that's being done. And by the way, I should mention, we're looking for Tulare Lake. We've taken the approach that the 3D model, the groundwater flow model that's currently being prepared, is what we're going to use for the critical head analysis, not necessarily the 1D modeling, and that is in the GSP that you're allowed to use either one, and we've opted to go in that direction. That is going to be one of the key items that we want to get both the Department of Water Resources and State Water Board to agree to that at this meeting next week. Oh, sorry.
I have a question for that. So
Yes.
it's in the best management practices that you
Yes.
can use either or.
Yes.
They're concerned that the state's gonna say, we're using 1D, and if you use another one that conflicts, even if you think it's better, we're going 1D. I mean, I'm just wondering how that's gonna be perceived.
Yeah, I don't know, Dan, that's one of the things that these conversations are so important, is to start to get that kind of feedback. We haven't gotten anything that says no, but we also haven't received it yes, and we'd like to get their blessing on this before we get too far into this. And I'm glad that this meeting got scheduled, fairly quickly, because from both the state board and DWR back to back, we'd like to get blessing from both. I'm hoping.
Tule Subbasin, they also requested the model. I imagine if
Yeah.
we use it, they're going to request the model from the Tulare Lake Subbasin.
Yeah, we're fully anticipating that. Yeah. Okay. The other item I was gonna mention very quickly is that we are also proposing a single well mitigation, program now for the Tulare Lake Subbasin. We have 4 out of the 5 GSAs have one. They're all slightly different. They have a little bit different wording here and there. But anybody going through them would quickly notice that you're maybe paying for something and these guys are not. And there's little things like that that we're gonna come back with one mitigation document, and all 5 GSAs now have agreed that once we agree to the final wording, we're going to sign off on those. So that's a good step. We're seeing a lot of coordination in Tulare Lake right now. We continue to see good coordination. Okay, let's move on to the fun part. The Tule Subbasin. So let me give you a few quick updates for Tule, and then we'll get into the meeting from last week, which I'm sure is what most of you would like to hear about. The groundwater sustainability plan continues updates. We are continuing to be updated. The technical working groups for each of the different sections of the chapters and the document continue to meet on a regular basis. There's a lot of lively discussion. There's a lot of back and forth. There's, not everyone agrees on everything, but that's good because, we're trying to get as much issues brought up and out there. We have we're heading up the monitoring network, and we had a meeting this week, just yesterday, and there's still some areas that we need to get sorted out. And, we have some areas where we feel like need a lot more discussion. So those are ongoing. There's an updated groundwater quality memo. The team that's working on that has got some feedback now from the state, so that we've updated that. It does feel very much like a little bit of a moving target still. We revise it. It has a little bit here and there, but they are getting down in the weeds on this. The state is very much looking at these documents very carefully and really getting down into the weeds on some of these issues, which is fine. It allows us to address all of their concerns before we have the final document together. Work on the groundwater flow model for the Tule Subbasin continues as well. I don't know if there's anything really new to share yet on the groundwater flow model, but once we have that, they're still in the data gathering mode a little bit for that. The Tule Policy Group, Dan or Myron, I don't know if either one of you have anything you want to share as far as the policy group is concerned. No.
Just hammering stuff out.
Yeah. Okay.
I think everybody came there this Monday with kind of, take on what happened last week.
Yeah, it happened last week, yeah.
But it seems like a bunch of them met with the Friant Water Authority, and I don't know, they're thinking that they can put something together that hopefully won't be as detrimental as what the state board says. I don't know. But yeah, hammering things out.
All right, yeah. The Tule subsidence meeting with DWR is also on the 31st. It's in the morning. Pike County, Tulare Lake is in the afternoon. So that's why you see the same dates for those two. And again, the Tule Subbasin, I think, has done quite a bit on that issue and has a pretty good presentation put together as far as that's concerned. The last thing I was going to mention is our Water Smart grant. We are still working on that. They've asked for some clarification on some of the funding mechanisms, not funding mechanisms, but funding processes and how you account future. So Deanna and I are working through that. We've got an email into the feds on that, to the Bureau, and we hope to work through that rather quickly, and get that resolved so that we can move forward with getting the agreement in place and then getting the funding in place for the meters. Okay. This is probably the thing that most people wanted to hear now is the State Water Board executive meeting that they had with the Tule Subbasin last week on the 16th. Deanna was actually there, and in person I was not. So I based a lot of what you're going to see on just the slide, but I'm going to ask Deanna to really elaborate for all of you on her thoughts and how that, what she kind of felt like were the takeaways from that meeting.
Sure. And for those of you who don't know, the State Water Resource Control Board hired a consulting firm to reach out to one of the general managers from each of the GSAs, as well as one of the policy committee members or a director from our boards from each of the GSAs. And that was Kearns and West. They reached out and asked us to attend a meeting, and said that we had an initial meeting with the facilitators from Kearns and West, and in that meeting they let us know that there would be discussion of the interim plan. So that kind of sets up what the meeting was about. We did, each of the GSAs had 2 people there. It was very restrictive who was available to attend. It was the 2 from each of the GSAs. We had our point of contact, Don Tucker, there, as well as the policy committee head, Andrew Hart, and state staff had 3 staff members, including Natalie Stork, Brienne St. Pierre, and Eric Ekdahl, who's really the overarching person, not in the STIGMA division, but of the of State Water Resource Control Board, as well as one board member, Board Member Morgan. It was, I thought they gave us more information. It wasn't a worthless meeting. And their concerns to me were not surprising. There's 3 main takeaways. They're very concerned about the Frank-Kern Canal. They're very concerned about domestic wells and state smalls, community wells, and they're very concerned with coordination with them and coordination within the Tule Subbasin and how that's working. They've decided to do a phased approach on any interim plan, and that interim plan, the initial phase would focus on the Frank-Kern Canal with a 2-mile corridor on each side of the canal. And that would be a complete moratorium of pumping for anything other than health and safety or domestic wells, community wells. Anything else would be a complete moratorium. They plan to have a draft of this first phase out to the public in January, and they intend to have it adopted by the state in April. That was a bit of a shock, particularly to those along the Frank-Kern Canal. That is an accelerated timeline, and of course there were a lot of questions to state staff regarding that, particularly around recharged water, banking. All the questions you can think of were asked, and the answer was complete moratorium. And so there was a lot of discussion about 2 tracks, if we could put together a plan before this was adopted. And the answer is yes. If you can do that, great. But the outcome in their mind had to be the same as a complete moratorium. So if our plan didn't have the same outcome on subsidence as a complete moratorium, it would not likely be accepted. And that's where that was left. The next phase of the plan, they acknowledged would likely be a bit delayed, because originally they were talking about having a plan out in June of next year, the original interim plan. might be a bit delayed because of this first phase, but it would be following probably somewhere in the end of 2027. It would be focused on domestic wells and community wells and protecting them with possible moratoriums in those areas. As well, they mentioned flooding, although domestic wells were certainly at the top of their list, but they did mention flooding. And they mentioned for the rest of the farmers within the Tule Subbasin, there would be some sort of ramp down. And so those were really the mains, although they did have a lot of concern about coordination with them and how we were going to coordinate. They requested a formal coordination schedule from the Tule Subbasin that they could review and comment on. They mentioned that they'd had 50 technical meetings in the last 2 years with the Tule Subbasin, which came as, frankly, a surprise to me. I certainly have not been invited to 50 meetings in the last 2 years. And the takeaway from that is they've been meeting individually. They were required to meet individually with Pixley Lower Tule because of the exclusion request, and they're obviously meeting with others to get to that number of 50. And they basically said, if you don't know what's going on in those meetings, that's a you problem, Tule Subbasin, for not speaking to each other or working better together. So that was a bit of a surprise and a frustrating takeaway, I think, for the room, particularly because we've had some requests into the state for meetings and felt like we weren't getting answers or getting responses on that, and they came out with the hit of, hey, we're talking to you guys, you're just not talking to each other. So I'm hopeful that we can work through that and be more coordinated and maybe take more of an approach that we're taking on the Tulare Lake side, where we have a person who's going to kind of manage that for us so we don't end up with these individual meetings. They're obviously being counted against us, even though they're maybe not helpful to everybody. So that's the real takeaways, the state's very serious. I did ask a question about enforcement, and we were told they have the tools to do it. It was still a little bit vague on what those tools are. I think there was some acknowledgement that there would be some of the same tools that we're using regarding fees and penalties and such, but it's still kind of a black box in my mind. And that's really it. I think the basin is focused on the Frank Kern Canal now. I've always said that we should have been more focused on that. But there's a lot of unknowns on the Frank Kern Canal, including Tule East, who they don't have a GSP and don't have management actions right now. And if Tule East isn't prepared by April, can other parts of the Frank Kern Canal be excluded from this interim plan, or is it just an interim plan because that part isn't capable of managing? I don't know the answers to those questions yet, and I don't think anybody else does either. And there are certain areas on the Frank Kern Canal. It was interesting technical meeting this week on the Frank Kern Canal, because there are people with their hair on fire that said, my team's going to be taking this on, and we're going to have a plan, but where does that leave the rest of the Frank Kern Canal? And so there's still things to be worked through, and we're endeavoring to do that. But it was an interesting meeting, and I see Brandon with a hand up. So Brandon, to you.
Thank you. Appreciate the update there. I was wondering, could we revisit the timeline there real quick? I just want to make sure I understand it. But I saw by April they're looking for board approval. Are they? I guess I wasn't 100% sure. Are they looking to implement some of the interim plan starting in April, or it would just be approved and be implemented at some point thereafter?
They would implement after approval in April on the Frank Kern Canal, and
right.
What that looks like. I mean, they say a complete moratorium. Really, the next question is what's the enforcement on that, and that is a black box that we don't understand yet. But supposedly, the adoption would be in April, and the conclusion, the observation from that would be they would be looking to implement immediately.
Okay, so instead of the end of December, which was previously discussed, right? Or we were under the impression of it could be as soon as April next year is when the interim
That's-
plan starts in some shape or form.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
So as a result of the moratorium, though, they will have some specific outcomes they're looking for in terms of,
Reduction of the
Reduction
rate
of
of,
subsidence.
yes, the rate
yeah,
of
so
subsidence.
they will have that in the plan, and so that you can at least see if they're complying with the locals.
Your guess is as good as ours.
Nick, I see your hand up. And Jeff too? Okay, Nick, how about you first?
Yeah, sure. Would that moratorium apply to GSAs that are currently exempt, so that DEID and Kern Tulare as well?
So, it sounded to me, I believe the answer to your question is yes. It wasn't overly specific, but I will say they did discuss a complete, exemption for Kern Tulare and only Kern Tulare, and they made that clear, only Kern Tulare, has the possibility, I think, of getting what's gonna be termed as the good actor provision, but that the Elena Early Mart was not exempted in the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, so 2 miles, is that both east and west of the Bryant?
Yes,
So it's a 4 mile swath along the canal?
yes.
And in any science or work that's been done, is there magic to the 2 miles? I mean, is there a technical scientific justification for the 2 miles?
From my discussions, no. The original 2 miles came from some work Thomas Harder did. I will say that they were not set on the 2 miles. They said that was what they think right now they're gonna use. They said they could go with 3 miles, or they could go with a little less than 2 miles. They weren't specific, but at this point, they were thinking it would be 2 miles.
But I think, Jeff, it came from some work that Brian actually did.
Oh, Brian, sorry.
okay.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
2019, that was their original proposal was 2 miles, and they had a scenario at that time for 3 miles as well,
Right.
if I remember correctly.
So, obviously, the interim plan would have more details, of course, the draft that'll be available in January, but we think that that's where that initial number came from, because it matches up with what Brian had proposed.
And they did say they were continuing, the reason that they weren't, set on the 2 miles is they're continuing to do some technical work. So I imagine when they come out with the interim plan, there will be some technical backup for whatever they choose. Or they might just state that came from the Bryant and they're going with the canal operator's suggestion. But I'm sure there'll be something in the interim plan that speaks to their rationalization for that.
Just if you had a question, Sid.
I was just curious what the State Water Board was, why they mentioned flooding. What was the context for that?
They didn't give context. They just said that's one of the concerns moving forward. Domestic wells, and we never went into it specifically because there was a lot of discussion about the Frank Kern, obviously, as being the first phase, and they didn't really go into phase 2 other than to state it would be very centered on domestic wells, and then they kind of casually mentioned flooding, so. I will say this is off topic kind of, but there is a lead in Mavens today on, El Nino and the Tulare Lake region, and it talks about flooding, and it's very concerning to Tulare Lake and to the Tule portion of Tri-County, certainly. And I suggest everybody read it, so.
I think it's SJV water.
Yeah, it's SJV water.
Another question is, can you tell us who the consultant is that the state board hired to work, to develop the interim plan?
So they hired Dudek, and Woodward Kearns to do the modeling. Now, Jeff, in all fairness, that there may be other people on the team, but Dudek has the main contract, and they may have other subs underneath them.
So were those consultants in the room and participating in this meeting?
No, they very much kept saying over and over again, this was not a technical meeting, it was a high-level policy meeting.
Okay. Well, I think they've certainly signaled if folks were curious about whether they were really serious, I think they got that message across.
Yeah, and it also I will say that Deanna and I've had this discussion a million times. Tulare Lake is next, and this is the message that I'm bringing to the Tulare Lake GSA managers and stakeholders and everybody, that once they're done with Thule, shortly thereafter they will be coming for Tulare Lake, and we need to get our act in gear and take it just as seriously as you just said, Jeff, a second ago, that they're serious. If they start with the word moratorium, then they're deadly serious, and we need to take it very seriously too, and work through our issues that need to be coordinated.
Yeah, the moratorium surprised me a little bit, and their lack of, they didn't seem concerned when there were legal questions in the room about being able to put a moratorium on banked or recharged water. So my perspective is they are not concerned about that. They're ready for the fight, and they're ready to test the waters. That's what I would say about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was their intention here, their ability to actually carry through. I mean, I guess we'll see. But moratoriums are easier to enforce, right? I mean, zero.
Yeah.
It's either on or off.
My question though is that, I mean, there's an awful lot of technical work that points to, not all pumping has equal impact on subsidence. So moratorium is an equal restriction, but not all pumping is equal. Both in its rights, right? I mean, if it's pre-stored surface water, then there's legal questions, but also really, I mean, it seems like the preponderance of the science is that it's clays compressing that really causes the subsidence, at least the major part of it, and that has a lot to do with how deep the pumping is occurring. No talk in here of any interest in any of that nuance.
So now this was discussed in the room as well, and Natalie did not want to get into technical terms. She did say that they understood that deep pumping was a big problem, but she also said there is subsidence caused by shallow pumping as well, and how much of that, what the percentage is, they don't know, but just going to shallow pumping would not correct the problem. That's basically what she said. I'm paraphrasing, but.
Myron, you were in the room too. I've asked Deanna this question. I was kind of curious on what was the takeaway from some of the directors as opposed to the GSA managers.
Yeah, same.
Same.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was surprised that everybody was as quiet as they were, honestly. But
I'm not sure there's much of a response.
it's kind of funny because, when the state set this thing up, they were so worried about confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know if it flip-flopped in the room when we got in there that we didn't want any confrontation. And so we all kept our mouths shut, right? But,
I've been in a number of state board meetings with the Thule Sub-Basin, and I've never found them to be confrontational.
they're scared that we were.
No, I'm sorry. I meant that people from our side were ever confrontational. I've never gotten that feeling that we've asked questions, and certainly you're allowed to do that, but I've never felt like we've been, anyone in the room has ever been belligerent or confrontational or
I just got the vibe that they're scared of us for whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just from the standpoint of, like, even when, Morgan was, right from the start, she was just, you know, parallel path, need parallel path, and, you know, we're so appreciative of you, you know, blah, 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 and
Right.
to me, it's like, you know,
Parallel path, meaning we're getting our
they
dues done.
really want us to be the, you know, they want us to be the guy that puts it on paper, and if it's not right, then we're the bad guy. That's what I feel,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because they want that parallel path, they want us to, you know, they don't want to just implement this interim plan. They want us to be a parallel path, and then when it gets to it, if it's not right, then we're the bad guy.
Difficult, I guess, what I'm thinking when you're dealing with the agencies.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking, yeah.
That's just my vibe.
No, I was very curious about what.
You know, another thing that I've been thinking a lot about, you know, after the fact too, is that we are, you know, Tulare Lake and Tule are the two basins that are in probation. Everybody else, you know, they got accepted or whatever, but they're not out of the,
No, not by any stretch.
by no stretch, right? And
Right.
so I think what's going to happen is they can implement on us to prove to all the other ones that they can also write them for not, you know, because they still have to comply.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And from what I gather, or from what I kind of, there's a lot of non-compliance going on. And they're having issues too. But because we are in probation, they can really put the hammer down on us first, right?
So, before we started the meeting, we were having a conversation about that, meeting we're having next week with the Department on the side for DWR. And, we got a list of some of the questions, and they seemed, rather broad and generic and kind of simple, to be honest with you. And, we're looking at these questions and we're like, man, we're so far ahead. You know, our two subbasins are so far ahead because we've had to be. And everyone else is still playing catch up on the BMP.
In a plan, but we are implementing. And I think a lot of them have it's on paper,
Yeah, but they're not
but
actually.
they're not implementing.
Yeah,
And they're slowly going about it, and I think they're looking at that, seeing results, and they're not happy with them.
Yeah.
So now those meetings are probably gonna start too, I think, in those subbasins.
yeah. Jeff, you came off of mute. There's a.
Yeah, I appreciate what Myron's saying. I you know, I do think the reality is that Tule and Tulare Lake, when you look at the subsidence maps over the last 6 years, and then you compare that to other parts of the state, you know, we just got a lot less water and a lot more problems. And so, you know, unfortunately, we are where we are. And I think folks feel like they've made a lot of sacrifice already. And when, you know, Sigma was passed, we thought we had until 2040 to eliminate undesirable results. But clearly DWR with subsidence that is going on has accelerated the timeline dramatically, and everybody has to adjust, including the state board. You know, they never admit that they ever made a mistake or they ever did anything wrong. I guess that's kind of in the nature of government, but they've made a few, and they've made more than a few, and they've had to adjust as well. And on our side, when I have the opportunity, I remind them that from the ground, it looks like they've been moving the goalpost steadily. And in reality, they have. They will not admit it, but they have. And you know, to hear Myron report on, you know, they give you all this happy talk. When you watch these state board meetings, You know, they all try to get along and look all collegial, and they're scared if anybody raises their voice. All of that is just immaterial because they're marching forward with very onerous policies that will have devastating impacts and are having devastating impacts on the life and the well-being of our, of our communities. And I haven't seen any evidence from them yet in anything they do that they particularly care.
True, very true.
Good observation, Jeff. Very good observation, unfortunately.
Okay, on that not so happy note, any other questions? I know this is a serious topic, so I do want to give people plenty of opportunity to ask any questions in case anyone doesn't have anything that they want to clarify or. The complete slide deck, by the way, is publicly available. We took, I don't know how many more there are. There's like 10 slides or something to that effect. We showed you the pertinent ones that were relevant to this short discussion, but we can certainly make that available if anybody's interested. We can make that available to you.
Hey, Amir, can you hear me?
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Steve, yeah. Hey, just a quick question, Deanna, for Myron's there on the board. What do we plan to do as in our GSA? We have an allocation plan, we have a subsidence plan. What are we going to do that growers need to be aware of? I know we're looking at this interim plan next year. Are we looking to change or contemplating change our transitional? I guess we want to know what's going to happen in 27, if at all, and we need a plan. So I'm hearing what I'm hearing. I think, Deanna, you told me that you're looking to coordinate with the basin on allocation. Does that mean everything above the sustainable yield is at risk? Kind of give us a little direction where we might go, because we're already made significant cutbacks of what we can pump.
Yeah, Steve, those are very good questions. I will say, there's a number of technical working groups in the Tule Subbasin, and two of those are centered around subsidence. One is a widespread subsidence study for critical head for the subbasin, and the other is particular around the southern land subsidence study area around the Delano Early Mart area. There will likely be actions that come out of those studies. We are going to try to coordinate, as you said, and I know I've talked to you about this a little bit. We're going to be looking at the policy committee first. I think we'll be looking at can we coordinate the subsidence management plan? Can we coordinate allocations? And maybe that is actually a hopeful thing. If we could coordinate them across GSAs, maybe that would lead to better trading efforts at some point. It could. Could it mean less to Tri-County growers? I don't know the answer to that. I do have concerns, particularly around the Delano Early Mart area. They are going to hammer the state to say their critical infrastructure has to be protected next. I don't know what that would look like on an interim plan, honestly. But the studies that come out of those two particular things on critical head are going to have impact, and I just don't know what they're going to be until we get further down the line.
Yeah.
Did you see the letter from Eric? Eric DEID sent a letter out last Friday. Did you see that letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're aware. So you're aware of what they're planning to do for landowners there for well.
Yes.
They're going to meter wells. So.
What was that? I don't think
Delano Early Mart sent out a stakeholder letter to their stakeholders, and they did say they're going to implement a metering program in their area. I think it's pretty clear that the state's looking for a metering program for the Tule Subbasin.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to move towards that.
because they're right along the canal too,
Yeah.
the whole way down. Now, a lot of these maps that they showed the other day stops at 56, right, Avenue 56. And so that excludes most of Delano Early Mart. But I don't know, I thought the state board said that the whole canal all the way through.
You're talking about the policy committee maps, right? The ones that show the policy committee? I want to say the only reason for that is those are the studies that Tom was working on previously. But my interpretation of what state staff presented was it is a full moratorium from top to bottom in the two.
That's what I thought I heard them say too. And that's from Tulare County line, or Tulare Kern, all the way up to Couillard, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a disconnect between the way, Tully's been looking at it, which is what Deanna was referring to, Tom's study, prior to Thursday's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think after that Thursday's meeting, we had a decided fall, and it was very clear that it needs to extend. And what we're doing, it needs to be revised for that area.
So and that's kind of, I think, why, if those guys gotta do it along the canal, I'm sure that they said, well, you might as well get everybody to do it.
Yeah.
I would assume.
In the exclusion request denials, there was, even in Delano Early March, they did a document for them as well. And they did, I want to say they called out that they needed to implement meter programs and some sort of demand management, particularly for dry years. So the state hasn't, although they've been in the past on reporting and fees, the state has not exempted them or spoke about them the way they're talking about current Tulare.
The plan to meter wells and develop the demand management was in the works before the state meeting as well. I think, Quinley just reiterated it in the letter he sent to landowners, but it was approved a month and a half ago, something like that.
Deanna and Amir, Sebastian Silvera here. I just have one very quick question. Were there any other areas or infrastructure or anything else that the state mentioned there would be moratoriums on?
The only other area they talked about moratorium specifically was around domestic wells and community wells.
And what, any indication what that looks like?
No detail to that. You can use your imagination and take Allensworth, for example, take the community wells of Allensworth and put a circle around them of some sort of area and say there's a moratorium of pumping.
Early Mark, Pixley.
Yes, that's right, Early Mark, Pixley. That I don't know how reasonable that thought process is or what they're thinking. They were not specific, but they did connect those two words. I'll say that.
They noted that as phase 2 potentially.
Yes, phase 2.
Yeah, this is definitely phase 2.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank you.
I don't know if that was a push because, I still don't understand, they were hitting on the domestic well deal pretty hard, but I feel like our basin has a pretty good plan in place, but we haven't rolled it out yet to prove it, right? We haven't put it on paper and so here it is, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why they're kind of hesitant to say what it, but I don't think that there's a big problem yet with a lot of these.
So Mark, I think the state is looking at the well mitigation as okay, great, you're doing that, but we want you to stop the problem before it happens. It's too late when we're talking mitigation. It's like hitting the MT on some sites, right? If we had it at 6 feet or whatever, right? By the time you get 6 feet, they're like, man, that's way too late. They want a whole bunch of steps before that. And I think that's part of what their concern is on some of these, is identifying things early enough that you can take action. Identify early and take action early, I think, is what they're.
Where's Tulare County in this? They did that. They funded that big project. I mean, it's been 12, 14 years ago. They had money from DWR. They funded this big thing, and something had to come out. I know I didn't attend them, but there was all this work that was done. And so are we starting at square one, or, I mean,
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
It was called SOAC, and I don't remember what the acronym stood for. but it was a huge, they brought in, that's where I met Laurel Firestone and met all these different groups, and they had the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board people there, and it was this big study that was done identifying some of these stressors and some of these community wells, and it's like some of this stuff just disappears, and then it's like a surprise later on. So I'm just wondering if Tulare County is stepping up, or if it's just being left to the GSAs and to the subbasin to kind of figure out things when there's been a lot of work done in the past. Just curious.
We'll probably pass that work, honestly.
Yeah.
The work we've done since then's probably more in-depth than what was ever done by the county. And the county has been very silent, Tulare County in particular has been very silent on SGMA issues. I don't know how long that will last, but they have not really engaged.
And there was a disconnect too, because the state all of a sudden said that they had people reporting, domestic wells that went out or whatever, and that never made it through the process of what we have, right? I felt that was weird.
Yeah. I don't know where they're reporting to, because, most domestics would go through self-help. Most of us have an agreement with self-help, so we would certainly hear about it if it was in Tri-County. I do believe Department of Water Resources has their own reporting site.
Yeah.
And maybe there was wells reported to that site that didn't go through self-help, but wouldn't they, I think that trigger self-help with that?
They report to the county reports to DWR, that's been my understanding in the past. So there may just be a missing connection.
And does the Department of Water Resources then turn around and contact self-help, or it's just if they go through that path and nothing
I
happens?
think it's just a database.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll bet you you're right. I'll bet you they completely, because, I don't know if people are completely aware of,
Yeah.
Self-help.
Yeah.
They just probably go, well, this is county, I'm just gonna call the county office, say, hey, my well's, problem here, and then it just goes through the channels it goes the wrong way.
And that would be an us problem. That would mean we are failing in the outreach, honestly. That's an us problem.
But then, that means that us or self-help has to go to the county and say, look, you're getting these calls,
Right.
redivert them, or whatever, right? Because they're obviously going the wrong place.
Yeah, that should go to both, right? There should be a arm that.
Now, in all fairness, though, Myron, self-help is dealing with a lot more people whose wells are having issues because of electrical issues, pump issues.
Oh, I'm sure
issues
they are.
That has nothing to do with the well going dry.
I'm sure there is.
So there's a large list of people that fall into that category that don't come to us because it's not the GSA's, it's not what the GSA covers. So, there's a much larger list that does that.
And then you might even get into the situation where they didn't like what they heard, people that are having issues, and then they try a different avenue.
That is also true.
Right.
Yeah, that is also true. All right,
Just one other thing, and that's a different program than the SAFER program to replace wells because of nitrates.
Yes.
yes.
So, I assume that's happening in addition to wells that might be at risk of going dry.
One of the issues, SAFER funding is going away basically, and they are leaning on the GSAs to replace it. For almost everything. That's my takeaway on that.
Because that's a lot more wells that you would have to mitigate than what would go dry.
Yes.
Yes, really, our concern is dry wells, subsidence, infrastructure problems, wells, and water quality. Those are the three that we're going to be mitigating likely. With the exception of nitrates, there is a different program for nitrates. But everything else will be a GSA mitigated well.
Okay. In that case, good discussion, but I do want to move on. We do have one other topic that we do want to get to today, and that is the voluntary land repurposing program, and introduce that program to this group.
Presentation do you want?
Green for, yeah, for Kathy. So
Just
Kathy,
real quick.
I'm gonna turn it over to you and Deanna to talk about this. And you wanna kind of introduce it?
Introduce.
So, I'm sure most of you are familiar, we've been talking about some sort of land covenant program, habitat easement program, some sort of program, to work with landowners to have them voluntarily take land out of production. In these discussions, as you can imagine, we're not the only GSA thinking about this, and so we reached out, Kathy reached out, and I reached out to Pixley to see what they were working on, and they are too working on, and this is their term actually that I've stole from them, voluntary land repurposing program. It does fit somewhat with the MLRP. There are some differences and some parallels, but it is a positive has come of that. Not only are we discussing it together, we have been asked to participate with them in drafting this voluntary land repurposing program, and in seeking funding together. I think it's a very good fit. It makes our requests for funding stronger to work together, and to have a program that's better aligned between the two of us is a better story, and it's a good fit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy to explain a little bit what we're looking at. This is certainly draft form stuff, and now that we're working more closely with Pixley, we will align a lot of what we do with what they do with their voluntary land repurposing program.
You bet, and I'm also going to probably call on Jesse too, because the Land Trust has been really involved in a lot of this. And, we've been doing a lot of planning. We've been talking about a lot of the negatives. A lot of these things have been going on with SGMA, the GSPs and things, and this is implementation, and it's very thoughtful. It kind of came out of, like you said, MLRP, and we came up against this having to fit into a box of funding with MLRP, the Multi-Land Repurposing Program, and we had some projects that came up, and we couldn't get them passed because there was issues with appraisals, different rules with the agencies. So Pixley with the trust and now with Tri-County, we're coming up with this voluntary land repurposing program that sets up a framework, and this is a draft framework that we're working also with the Watershed Coalition and with the trust, that helps us look at other funding and get other funding. And I've worked a lot with the NRCS Farm Bill years ago in the Great Plains, and I think this is going to fit very well with some of the Farm Bill. A lot of the farmers go into EQIP and things. So just very quickly, I took this directly out of the document that was sent out. And so, as we've mentioned, it supports SGMA. Really important, and I underlined it, it's voluntary. It compensates landowners for restricting groundwater irrigation demand. There's an enrollment process, and it's a transition to, and as we say approved, I'm going to put that in quotes, non-irrigated or low water use land use. So we can go on to the next one. So this is right out of the document that was sent. I just thought, so here's kind of the objectives. And I think the major one is the first one. Measurable and durable reductions in groundwater demand. That's what we're looking at. Some of the other programs come out, and there's a lot of outreach and different things that are going on. But really what we're trying to do in Tri-County and also Pixley, I think we're looking at 30,000 acres of irrigated land that has been identified that needs to come out of production for irrigated agriculture. Is that
in Pixley and
Tri-County? Am I
well, I don't know.
pretty
It
accurate?
was more than that, but
I think it's more.
It's more than that. Yeah. This is old data. But I think what you're really looking at is these are the purpose and objectives that came out, and I don't like to read slides, but you can see, mainly it's really revolving around groundwater, and working with landowners to develop alternative land uses, maintain and also long-term economic viability. I think there's a study going on that is being funded from the GSAs. There's also another study that actually has hired Highland Economics to look at exactly if a piece of property comes out of production, what would be the appropriate compensation to give a landowner? So we can go to the next one. I don't want to get too... So again, this is proposed. It's voluntary. There will be a land use restriction agreement. It might be a conservation easement. It could be a covenant. It could be something similar to the Conservation Reserve Program. Again, these are things that are being explored with the help of the trust, Sequoia Riverlands Trust, and NRCS. And then there will be a water use restriction. Next slide. So the next steps, and you'll see this in this document, but I think some of the things we have to look at is eligibility. There will be an enrollment process similar to Farm Bill types activities. There will be post-enrollment land uses. There's got to be a compensation framework, and right now that's where we've been really challenged because you can't just do an appraisal because there is no appraisal process that works with a lot of the federal and state agencies. So how do you determine land and water values? Funding strategy, as I said, we don't want to get ourselves into a box where we're trying to fit a particular state or federal funding or corporate funding. We want to develop this program so that it is attractive and we can get various types of funding into our area. And then the enrollment process. How do you have applicants, what's required and how do you evaluate it? We're putting together a rubric to look at how, very similar to the land, but Myron, what you participated in, that 1 year land, 1 or 2 year land fallowing program, which they didn't want to fund anymore. So we're trying to figure out how we can move on with these next steps. And then the next slide. And so here's kind of the strategic benefits of the GSA. And so again, it's voluntary pathways, long-term, addressing long-term overdraft, beneficial land uses. We don't want to have the fields out here blowing away. We know that what happened over on your family that was involved in the Atwell Island project, that was a very expensive repurposing. We want to find things that are easier to implement. And so again, I'm kind of repeating myself, but it needs to be a scalable framework. And also the big thing is, we were talking about this the other day, is demonstrate collaboration between the GSAs and the Tule Subbasin. Demonstrate back to the state, hey, we're working together on this. And the last slide, I think.
That is the last.
That's the last slide. So this is just a synopsis. You can see more in this draft document that was sent out by Stacy prior to the meeting. But if you have any questions, I know the Watershed Coalition is working on some of these things in the Tule Trust. You can send Deanna questions on it, but we just wanted to introduce this because we've talked about several different types of voluntary programs to reduce groundwater demand within the Tule Subbasin. And right now, this is a pretty exciting program. It's just going to take a little bit of work to kind of work out the kinks and decide how we're going to move forward. So any questions?
So let me just add one thing before we open it up for questions. I just want to emphasize again to everybody that this is a draft.
Yes, it's a draft.
And we are working with Lower Tule and Pixley very carefully and in lockstep because we want these programs to be the same and we want them to work together. So as we're working through this, we're going to be bringing it back to this committee. We're going to be bringing it back to all of you, and we're going to be getting input from this group. And so there's plenty of opportunities for all of you to have provide plenty of input. I also realize that the number one question that all of you have in your mind right now is how the compensation is going to be determined, and that is still an ongoing issue. There will be understand that that is probably the key issue, that all of you are gonna ask that question, but give us a little bit of time to work through that. Also, as Kathy mentioned, the Highland Economics is finishing off their study, and that's gonna help, with some of the analysis for the compensation as well, but, we realize that that's a very important part of this, and we want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
Myron, you look like you're going to ask me a question.
I'm just thinking.
And
Yeah.
that's what we need. We need that, think about how we can move forward, because this is different than a lot of things that have been presented in the past. It's different than the conservation reserve programs that have been in the Farm Bill. So it's really taking responsibility locally to look at what works and what can work.
So things for all of you to take away, obviously the compensation and thoughts on how that can be determined, any ideas, suggestions, whatever you have, we're happy to hear that and would welcome that. The other thing to think about as well is that on that next step slide, Kathy has item number 2, which is the approved post-enrollment land uses. Think about that too, and give us your thoughts on that. I think all of that would be very helpful to making sure that the final program is in lockstep with what the needs of of these stakeholders are, the landowners.
Yeah, if I could, this program is the funding for developing the program. Is that GSA that's funding it, or is there grant money, or where's that funding come from?
Mostly the GSAs are developing it. I think, did the Highland study come through MLRP?
Yes, so Pixley, because they have 2 projects under MLRP that Department of Conservation said no go, they stepped back and they got approval under the MLRP program from DOC to develop this. So Highland Economics is being funded through the MLRP. And so they're waiting to get this approved and move forward. And hopefully we're hoping in the future collectively to get Prop 4 money through the MLRP in the future. I think we're looking at working with the trust, working as GSAs together, working with some of our consultants, that we really are going to propose various funding streams and get on the, I hate to say get on the circuit, but really be out there promoting the program once it's approved and once we locally are ready to go forward. I mean, whether it's Farm Bill, through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, whether it's through state funds, corporate funds. We even want to look at corporate sponsors. I worked on a project, Farming in the Flyways, and we had a fabulous corporate sponsor because they work in oil and gas, and it was Phillips Petroleum. Gave us millions of dollars to work directly with farmers because they had a bad reputation for some of these little small producers in the area that were polluting. And so this big corporation came in and said, hey, we want to try to be the good neighbor. And so you never know who can step up and help us, but having a good, solid program, I think, is going to be the key.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think Deanna mentioned the fact that we, along with Pixley, are going after some federal funding right now. We're working through the application process.
Yeah, and one of the things that was very positive that came out of the meeting with Travis, particularly over at Pixley, was that it hurts us if we compete for the same funding. We're hurting each other by us both going applications for the same funding and likely not to receive funding for our areas. So, and partnering and not competing for the same funding, we think we'll have stronger applications for some of this funding coming up.
Yeah, just a couple observations. I talked to Travis. He told me about that the Highland study, which is really needed to try to figure out what this land's worth. If you remember 2 years ago, the S2 J2 Sierra, out of Fresno, they looked at our county and the 4 counties from Fresno down to Tulare, and we know there's going to be a lot of repurposing, and they came up with a dollar figure of like $36,000 an acre, which I mean, yeah, who wouldn't be happy to receive $36,000 an acre? It's just so unrealistic. So I can tell you in the blueprint, as we're working through the Unified Valley Water Plan, there's a cost to not getting supplemental water because we'll fallow more land. What do you use for a realistic value on what the economic cost is? So it's good to get some actual academic work, study work done on that. But you're also looking at, I mean, Kathy, you mentioned 30,000 acres, maybe more. I mean, even $1,000 an acre is $30 million, right? I mean, and really goes up from there. And then that's at the same time that you got the state board telling you basically, a moratorium is not out of the realm of the possible. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. We got to move forward on all counts. Just on the corporate side, though, I mean, I think data centers are probably looking for some better press, and it might not be a bad idea to, try to get somebody who knows who those folks are to, start making some contacts, because it may very well be that they're the new oil companies in terms of needing to buy some goodwill.
So when they're building their data center in New Mexico, they can mitigate in California.
Put one right in the middle of Bixley.
Sure.
Put it down there.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Not a bad idea, Jeff.
I got about
I think
320 acres they could fit
that
on.
creative, and also want to do, because I'm going to put on my trust hat, because I'm with the Thule Trust. I just became VP, took over for Joey, but the trust is also going to be a really important partner in this funding effort that we're doing with the regional conservation plan, and also with your healthy soils that Nick did mention. So
he said that at the top. I mean,
yeah.
I think, consolidating all of these funding applications in a single program. I think what I've seen with a lot of the block grants is that there's a lot of parallel efforts at reaching farmers. So the GSAs are really well set up to kind of be a single point of contact and then match different funding pots to whatever they're asking for. I know Jeff has been real emphatic, I would say. I think that's fair, Jeff, about the need to get water use efficiency funding here too. So I think it's not, I would look at this not only as fallowing funding, but also agronomic improvements. So
yeah.
I think there are these a variety of different funding sources that could come in.
All right, we doing time-wise? We got about 5 minutes left. Any questions on the VLRP program before we move on? Anything else anyone has that they want to clarify? Or our next few meetings will be very much focused on this topic, and you can expect a lot more feedback and a lot more discussion, a lot more for you guys to consider and come back to us with your ideas and thoughts. I would take the initial plan that, I don't know, we made this available to everybody. Take a look at it, and whatever thoughts, ideas, suggestions you have, get a hold of Deanna and just call her, email her, and give her your thoughts.
So this draft has to go into like final form, and then once it's adopted, then we can start going after money, right? So they see the.
I think we're going to run parallel
path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest issue still, Myron, I think is what's missing out of here is that whole discussion of how the compensation will be derived and how we will achieve, what
station and the scoring matrix
Yeah.
are still to be developed.
Those are probably the biggest hurdles that, you know, that we still need to include in this document.
Right. But in this document right now, the way it sits is we're working with Pixley and us. So it's not really gonna cover any ground like in the Bryant or anything like that.
Currently, it's Bixley and Tri-County in a partnership.
You might have a couple of acres in Pixley that get up there, but get up close to the Bryant, but other than that, it's not
Right.
easy.
Yeah. Louise needs to have something similar, but they're just not in a position to do it right now, so we talked about that a little bit, but
Yeah.
they've got to get over some hurdles before they can get to this point.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about our upcoming meetings. We've got a Tri-County Board meeting on August 6th at 1 o'clock. And then we have an advisory committee. Our next meeting is on the 26th at 10 a.m. All right, thank you everybody for attending, very much appreciate it. We always look forward to your comments. We're looking forward to getting it, some feedback on the VLRP from you, and if you have any other thoughts and ideas that you want to ask on that meeting that occurred last week, get a hold of Deanna directly. All right, thanks everyone, take care.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Yeah.